Deep inside the Sri Padmanabhaswamy Temple, there is a physical barrier that defies the basic anatomy of a threshold. It is a massive, steel-like surface with no visible lock, no hinges, and no seam. We are used to the familiar idea that every sealed vault is simply waiting for the right key. We assume that closure is just a temporary state, a mechanical puzzle left behind for modern technology to eventually solve. But this entrance was not built to wait for a key. It was constructed with the deliberate intention of never being opened again. When an official inventory committee examined the subterranean corridors beneath the temple, their records documented a metal face that offered no conventional means of entry. There is no handle to pull. There is no keyhole to probe. There is only a flat, heavy expanse of metal. This is not a ghost story meant to frighten thieves, nor is it a faded legend from antiquity. It is a documented modern reality, firmly recorded in the archives of the government of Kerala and the Travancore royal family. In the year 2011, the Supreme Court of India ordered the temple vaults to be opened and catalogued. The authorities moved through the complex, successfully opening other chambers. But when they reached Vault B, the process stopped. Despite the highest legal authority in the country demanding transparency, the door remains completely shut today. We like to believe that our ultimate goal is discovery. We assume we will always open a box if we find one in the dark. Yet this untouched barrier proves that sometimes the collective choice to preserve a mystery is stronger than the instinct to know. It forces us to ask, what exact force can hold a door permanently shut when no one even stands guard? In the year 2011, the Supreme Court of India ordered an official inventory of the vaults beneath the temple. The goal was simple transparency. A modern state usually demands that historical heritage be catalogued and counted, but a legal mandate often fractures when it meets the weight of local legend. It collides with a deep unspoken belief that certain thresholds are simply not meant to be crossed. The court inventory moved forward, documenting items in the surrounding chambers. Then, later in 2011, the same Supreme Court issued a new directive. They deliberately halted the opening of Vault B. The official record cited the need for further committee review and security assessments. The legal process stopped at a smooth metal door. This is the first of 10 locked thresholds we are examining today. 10 real doors that remain sealed by human choice. If you want to follow this entire investigation, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I also ask that you leave a comment below with the exact time, your location, and the place where you are watching this from. The Supreme Court of India possessed total authority. Yet, when faced with the unknown, the highest legal power in the nation hesitated at the threshold. It is a quiet admission that even modern institutions can choose to leave a mystery intact. They decided that some things are better left undocumented. But long before judges and committees chose to defer to the unknown, ancient builders were constructing physical barriers designed to enforce this exact kind of silence. In 1993, an engineer named Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a small robot named Upuat 2 up a narrow, steeply angled shaft inside the Great Pyramid. Usually, when a passage in an ancient Egyptian monument ends, it hits a rough block of stone. This is a basic structural plug, meant only to hold the weight of the masonry above it. But 65 meters deep into the southern shaft of the Queen's chamber, the robot's camera found something else. It found a polished limestone slab, perfectly fitted to the walls, complete with 2 distinct copper fittings. In 2011, the JD project sent a new robot up the same dark incline. This one carried a bore camera, which it pushed through the stone. Behind the first slab, the camera revealed a small, empty space, and then a second, identical blocking slab, marked with red ochre. The records describe a profound divide over what these stones actually are. Egyptologists often frame the slabs as simple structural closures left behind by the builders. But Gantenbrink and the JD project engineers describe them as deliberately fashioned doors, designed with specific hardware and an unknown purpose. This leaves us with a strange physical reality. The shaft itself is only 20 centimeters across. A human body could never traverse it. Yet ancient engineers went to immense effort to seal it, layer by layer, in the absolute dark. The pyramid closed itself, sealing a threshold in a place where no living person could ever stand to knock. We still do not know what lies beyond the second slab. But physical barriers of limestone and copper are only one way to hold a passage shut. What happens when a door is sealed not by engineering, but by the weight of a promised future. Inscriptions on the city walls of Jerusalem document a very specific masonry project. Between 1538 and 1541, Ottoman Sultan Suleiman I ordered the Golden Gate to be walled up with solid stone. This was not a standard military reinforcement. A normal wall is built to stop an army. This gate was sealed to block a theological event. To understand how mortar is used against an idea, look at what was built directly outside the blocked threshold: a Muslim cemetery. The records describe a dense eschatological tradition centered on this archway. Jewish texts, drawing from the book of Ezekiel, hold that this is the precise gate through which the Messiah will enter. Christian and Islamic traditions also tie this exact location to the final judgment. Over time, a powerful local legend wrapped itself around the masonry. The attributed tradition claims Suleiman deliberately closed the gate and placed the burial ground to forestall that messianic arrival, believing a holy figure would not cross a graveyard. But there is a strange paradox built into this architecture. By refusing to let the gate function, the builders did not erase the legend. They anchored it. The physical blockage transformed a simple doorway into a permanent monument to the prophecy it was meant to stop. You can try to seal a door against the future, but the act of closing it often becomes part of the prophecy itself. Prophecy, however, is not the only force that can freeze a threshold. Some doors are not closed by ancient kings. They are walled off by the modern state, where the institutional mandate to preserve history quietly overrides the human demand to look inside. The Golden Gate was sealed by religious and political decree, but modern authority also manages the basements of the world's most famous monuments. Below the riverside terrace of the Taj Mahal, there are 22 sealed chambers. The Taj Mahal is celebrated as a masterpiece of absolute transparency, a mausoleum of glowing white marble visited by millions. But beneath that perfect symmetry lies a hidden structural reality, a forgotten network of lower rooms, quietly walled off from public view. The official record is straightforward. The Archaeological Survey of India maintains a strict policy of keeping these chambers closed. Their directives document the closure as a matter of basic structural conservation, protecting the ancient foundation. Yet a locked door beneath a legendary monument inevitably invites suspicion. Petitions have repeatedly demanded access, with some claiming the spaces hold original tomb markers. In the year 2017, the Supreme Court of India officially declined a petition to open the rooms, deferring to the survey's structural mandate. The doors stayed shut. This is where the ordinary explanation begins to blur. When an institution locks a door to protect a building, preservation becomes indistinguishable from secrecy. The barrier is perfectly justified by engineering, but the result is a permanent blind spot in the historical record. The documents outline an architectural necessity, but they also reveal a quiet truth about historical access. Institutional authority decides where the threshold of knowledge stops. The state chooses what the public is allowed to see. And while 22 basement rooms represent a minor architectural boundary, that same institutional instinct can operate on a much larger scale. Sometimes a modern state decides not just to lock a room, but to leave an entire subterranean world completely untouched. The central mound of the Qin Shi Huang mausoleum at Lintong stands exactly as it has for over 2 millennia. Since 1974, archaeologists have carefully excavated the surrounding trenches. Pit 1 alone revealed thousands of terracotta warriors, meticulously unearthed and catalogued, yet the massive earthen tumulus at the exact center of the complex remains entirely unbreached. This is not a matter of a lost location or a lack of funding. The Shanxi Provincial Institute of Archaeology maintains a strict, documented policy. They mandate absolute non-excavation for the emperor's tomb. The directive is not driven by fear or local myth, but by the physical reality of preservation. When the terracotta warriors were first exposed to modern air, their original vibrant paint curled and vanished in a matter of minutes. To open the central chamber today would be to destroy whatever fragile trace of history survives within its walls. The official stance is to wait until technology advances enough to protect the interior without question, but that timeline is entirely open-ended. It is an active institutional choice to leave a profound historical threshold closed for generations. Here, the refusal to open a door is not a failure of modern science. It is a striking assertion of it. The state has chosen to defer knowledge, accepting that sometimes the most advanced archaeological decision is to do nothing at all. But this level of permanent restraint forces a question. What exactly is the institution so careful not to disturb? If we cannot look inside the mound, we are left to rely on what the ancient records describe waiting for us beneath the earth. If the central tumulus remains deliberately untouched, what exactly is the state trying not to disturb? The only answer comes from an ancient text. Around 94 BC, the historian Sima Qian compiled the Shiji. When detailing the emperor's tomb, the records describe a landscape built for death. Mechanical crossbows rigged to fire upon intruders, and rivers of liquid mercury designed to mimic the waterways of the empire. For generations, archaeologists treated this account as historical poetry. It was read as a metaphor, not a literal blueprint. But to bridge the gap between ancient text and modern science, researchers did not need to breach the mound. They only needed to read the chemistry of the soil above it. In 1981, and again during a geochemical mapping survey in 2003, scientists tested the earth covering the tumulus. They detected anomalous, highly concentrated traces of mercury. The chemical signature aligned perfectly with the subterranean geography described by the ancient historian. No one can say with certainty whether the mechanical traps still function. After 2,000 years of ground compression and wood decay, it is unlikely that a buried crossbow would still snap forward. But the toxic environment is not a metaphor. What was once written off as an ancient legend is now corroborated by modern chemistry. Sima Qian was not inventing a myth. He was documenting a material deterrent. The tomb remains sealed because ancient engineering still holds the power to deter modern science. The state has chosen to wait. But while a government can afford to defer excavation for centuries, not every sealed door is guarded by national policy. Sometimes, a threshold is closed by a much simpler force, the private absolute refusal of living people. In the records of Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, there are no ancient curses or mechanical traps. There are only ground-penetrating radar surveys. These scans indicate clear subsurface voids beneath the chapel floor. It is easy to get lost in the internet mythology surrounding this building. But if you strip away the stories of secret societies, you are left with a barrier much more absolute: private ownership. In the 1690s, a local historian named Father Richard Augustine Hay wrote an account describing the ancestors of the chapel founders. According to his manuscript, the St. Clair Knights were interred in their full armor, sealed within a hidden space beneath the stone. For centuries, this was treated as a local legend. Then, modern radar confirmed that empty spaces do indeed exist below the floorboards. The armored knights remain an unverified historical text. The voids on the radar, however, are a material fact. Yet every request to drill, to lower a bore camera, or to excavate has been met with the exact same response from the Chapel Trust. They simply decline to permit the work. We often expect ancient thresholds to be guarded by toxic rivers or sweeping state preservation laws. But Rosslyn shows us something simpler. The final lock on history is just a living person saying no. There is no physical danger preventing entry. The door remains closed by the quiet will of the current owners. Human refusal is the most impenetrable seal of all. It requires no engineering to maintain, and it cannot be defeated by better technology. And that brings us back to the most complex threshold of our investigation, because beneath the Padmanabhaswamy Temple, the door to Vault B is not held shut by just one of these forces. It is held by human will, state law, and local legend, all standing at the exact same door. We return to where this story began. In the year 2011, the Supreme Court of India ordered a full inventory of the Sri Padmanabhaswamy Temple vaults. When the committee unsealed Vault A, they did not find a modest collection of ceremonial artifacts. To understand the scale, you must discard normal expectations. They documented sacks of diamonds, heavy gold thrones, and thousands of Napoleon-era coins. The estimated value reached into the trillions of rupees. The committee catalogued one of the largest accumulations of wealth in modern history. But just weeks after Vault A was opened, the context shifted. In July 2011, the original petitioner who fought to inventory the temple, a man named Sundarajan, suddenly died. Official medical records point to illness. But in the shadow of the temple, timing becomes its own truth. Local tradition immediately attributed his passing to the disturbance of the site, transforming a biological coincidence into a protective legend. This fear was never written into the court filings, but it settled over the case regardless. This creates a profound contradiction. The greatest documented treasure in the modern world was secured, yet it sits right next to Vault B, the metal door that remains stubbornly shut. The state has the capacity to cut through the steel. The court has the authority to force the issue. Yet the choice to keep it sealed belongs to a powerful combination of institutional hesitation, legal awe, and an attributed fear of the unknown. It brings us to our final threshold. When the law and the people both stop before a closed door, we are left to ask what it means when humanity deliberately chooses to leave a lock unbroken. High up in the cliffs of Deir el-Bahari, the upper sanctuary chambers of Hatshepsut's mortuary temple remain quietly sealed. They are closed not by a curse but by the deliberate conservation policy of the Polish Center of Mediterranean Archaeology. To understand this modern act of sealing a chapel, we must look at the ancient act of emptying a tomb. When Howard Carter cleared Hatshepsut's original tomb, known as KV-20, in 1903, he did not find an intact burial. His records describe the sarcophagus as already empty. The evidence suggests the body was relocated in antiquity, the doorway deliberately left open, and the true resting place concealed by choice. The ancients emptied one room to protect it, just as modern conservators seal another today. This pattern connects the 10 thresholds we have stood before: the polished limestone of the Gantenbrink door, the 16th century masonry of the Golden Gate, the 22 riverside rooms of the Taj Mahal, the unbreached tumulus of Qin Shi Huang, the radar voids beneath Rosslyn Chapel, and the steel-like surface of Padmanabhaswamy Vault B. We often assume a closed door is simply a lock waiting for a better key. But the historical record reveals something more profound. Closure is rarely a failure of engineering. It is an active philosophical choice. It is an institutional and sometimes sacred act of preservation. Humanity has always decided what to catalog and what to leave in the dark. We deliberately choose to preserve the mystery over the knowledge. We leave the boundary untouched because the silence behind it holds more weight than the bare facts. Look back at the stone walls and paper records we have examined. Which of these 10 doors do you believe should remain closed, and which do we have a duty to open?